So Eskom has received billions in bailouts over the past decade, yet here we are, still mostly in the dark. And today we're trying to find out where has all the money gone. Heidi Giokos has been looking at Eskom's financials over the past 10 years, and she joins us now in studio. Hello, Heidi. Before we get to that, it seems that Eskom has decided to have almost daily briefings now, just to keep us updated with where we are, which is nice because we get to find out where exactly we are with the load shedding and the power cuts that are coming our way. But the issue of money needed for maintenance, and we know that maintenance is one of the reasons, or a lack thereof, why we're in the pickle we are. What do they say at today's briefing about the maintenance issue?
So we do understand that between 10 to 12 billion rand is needed per annum to maintain Eskom power stations. Now, people would think, okay, well, it's not too bad, it's per annum, it's for maintenance, but when you're trying to maintain an old and broken power station, it almost seems as though it's going into an endless pit. And this is the outrage that many South Africans have, to say it would have been great if the money was being used and channeled into power stations that could actually provide sustainable and long-term electricity supply, but that's not the case here. What was also interesting about today's briefing is the fact that the CEO of Eskom, Andre de Ruyter, was asked about how much more money Eskom is actually going to need in the long term. We do know that the finance minister is expected to deliver the medium-term budget policy statement tomorrow. And basically what the CEO said was he's going to use the analogy of a broken car, and he says we can't keep fixing the broken car, we actually just need a new car. So I pose the question to say, well, how much is a new car going to cost South Africans? And that question came unanswered. What's also important is that we need to understand as South Africans how much money has been spent for the diesel that's been used for the generators to try and keep the lights on to some extent during this load shed period. But that question was not answered, and that is a huge concern.
And that diesel is meant to be to top up. It's not meant to provide the base load, which is the basic energy we need to keep everything stable. Let's look back now, because this is not just one incident of lots of money for maintenance. We're talking a massive history of bailouts for Eskom. And it seems despite those bailouts, it still can't meet its payments. Tell us more.
Yes, so we do know that Eskom is in a very difficult position. If we can just take a look at our video wall, we do know that South Africa's biggest liability is Eskom because of how much it drains from the fiscus, how much it needs from the fiscus, and this is a constant occurrence. If we look at the next slide, dating back to how much taxpayers have paid. From 2008 to 2019, over 132 billion rand has been paid to Eskom. This is in bailouts, this is in borrowing, this is in guarantees. And if you just look at the next slide, which is even more concerning, I know you have questions,
I'm still
Sally,
getting over the 132 billion.
Bailouts to date, and Sally, this is excluding what was given in the 2020 budget with regards to that 400 billion rand debt. Over 200 billion rand has been paid to Eskom. And this is why South Africans are outraged, to say, okay, we understand there are problems, but why is it costing us so much and we still don't have a proper power utility?
Yeah, and that earlier figure, what it was, 132 billion, I was thinking of 131 billion rand, which of course we've just heard from COP26 is going to be offered to us in the form of loans and grants to transition us to green energy. And we think if this had been a properly managed utility, we might not have needed any of those loans that we're now going to have to depend on. And it's just a drop in the ocean. If we go back to 2005, what was Eskom borrowing at that point? Do I need a chair to sit down?
Maybe. I was really shocked about this. I actually had to call a couple of people because I just couldn't understand where that figure came from. 2005 to 2006, Eskom had borrowed over 30 billion rand. That was in 2005. If you date back to that time, I don't think load shedding had started then. But then 2019, 440 billion rand is what Eskom has borrowed. And this is because of their massive debt issue. And this is why this is such a big issue, because where has all this money gone to? And we know that Eskom is in the process of unbundling, putting it into three separate entities, but where has the money gone to? If we just take a look at the next slide, where you can actually see this is mind-blowing, because if you look at the green line shows you the revenue collection of the power utility. The purple line shows you the debt. It should have been the other way around to say this is how much Eskom has collected in revenue from municipalities, from individual households, but look how that green line is looking, whereas the debt has far exceeded how much they're actually collecting. And it should have been the opposite, because Eskom would have not been in that situation if they had collected. And we do know, for example, Soweto is not paying, and this has put a huge strain on Eskom. But what's also interesting is that our reporter, Lindsay Denlinger, was in that AG report today about Eskom, and Eskom has been criticised about not doing enough to collect revenue.
And it's also costing, Eskom needs $1 billion a week to keep our lights on.
Yes, what's interesting here, if you take a look at the next slide, we do know in March this year, Eskom was briefing Parliament, the Scopa Portfolio Committee, and we do know that they alluded to the fact that they need 1 billion rand. I mean, just look at that figure, per week to keep the lights on. And what falls at the back of this is the fact that if we take a look at the next slide, you can actually see how much in 1 year was spent on diesel-generated power. This is only what was used for diesel to keep those generators moving when there is load shedding, so that there isn't a complete blackout.
Is it a little bit like buying your food on your credit card, which we're always told is the worst possible thing you can do because it's simply not sustainable?
Yes, exactly. This is unsustainable, and I think this is why something urgently needs to be addressed. I'm not sure if people were watching with Bradan earlier on. He said the semantics around whether it's load shedding or blackouts doesn't address the problem. The problem is South Africans don't have electricity, sustainable electricity, and you pumping billions and billions every year into the fiscus. It's going to be interesting to see what the finance minister says tomorrow, and whether or not there's going to be more money pumped into Eskom. And we've heard this time and time again, that Eskom needs more money. But how much more money? Why can't we keep our lights on? And why isn't there a mix in energy so that we don't constantly have this problem and reliance on coal-fired power stations, and then we have this problem?
Yeah, because we've had that policy in place for renewables for 10 years now. Very little has happened. Heidi Giokos, thank you so much for breaking it all down so simply for us.